In Washington tonight, a political firestorm is growing over who will testify, who will not, and who controls what the public gets to see. At the center of the controversy are the still unresolved questions surrounding Jeffrey Epstein, the disgraced financier whose crimes exposed a vast network of influence, secrecy, and protection at the highest levels of power. Years after Epstein's death in federal custody, millions of documents tied to his operations remain sealed or only partially released. Now, as Congress claims to investigate how the government failed Epstein's victims, the fight is no longer just about Epstein himself. It is about transparency, political control, and whether the same rules apply to everyone, even the most powerful. The latest clash began when the House Oversight Committee, led by Republican Chairman James Comer, issued subpoenas to former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton as part of an inquiry into how Epstein's trafficking operation was handled by federal authorities. The committee claims it is examining whether government agencies failed to act when warning signs were already visible. The Clintons responded by saying they would testify under oath and answer any questions, but they made one condition clear. They want to do it publicly, cameras on, in front of the American people. Hillary Clinton released a statement saying that for 6 months, she and her husband had engaged with the committee in good faith, provided answers under oath, and cooperated fully. She said Republicans ignored those answers and shifted the process into what she called a political distraction. She challenged Chairman Comer directly, saying that if Republicans truly believe in transparency, nothing is more transparent than a public hearing. Bill Clinton echoed that position, saying he had nothing to hide and was willing to testify openly under oath. Instead of agreeing to that request, Chairman Comer announced that the Clintons would only be questioned in closed-door depositions. He argued that public hearings are more about political theater than substance, and that depositions are where serious investigations happen. He promised that transcripts, audio, and video would eventually be released, but only after the committee decides when and how. That promise immediately raised red flags among Democrats, legal experts, and transparency advocates. They argue that when politicians control the timing and editing of testimony releases, they also control the story. Instead of the public seeing the truth unfold in real time, the public gets a filtered version. Critics also point out that Republicans have repeatedly held public hearings when investigating Democrats in the past, often broadcasting dramatic confrontations live. But now, when the Clintons themselves are asking for secrecy, Republicans insist on secrecy. This dispute has also revived scrutiny over a much bigger question. Why are Republicans focusing so heavily on the Clintons while avoiding similar demands for Donald Trump to testify under oath? According to analysts reviewing the partial release of Epstein-related documents, Trump's name appears tens of thousands of times in the files, far more than Clinton's. The Epstein archive is believed to contain more than 3 million documents and possibly tens of millions of pages. Only a small fraction has been made public so far. Even that limited release repeatedly references Trump and people close to him. That fact has fueled questions about whether the Oversight Committee's investigation is about finding the truth or about protecting political allies. Reporters have pressed House Speaker Mike Johnson and other Republican leaders about whether Trump should also be required to testify under oath. Johnson has deflected, saying Trump answers questions from the press every day, but journalists and legal experts note there is a crucial difference between answering questions in interviews and testifying under oath. Under oath, false statements carry legal consequences. Interviews do not. The controversy escalated further when Donald Trump, who once accused Bill Clinton of being tied to Epstein, suddenly changed his tone in a recent interview. Trump said it bothers him that someone is going after Clinton and that he actually likes him. That reversal stunned many observers. For years, Trump used attacks on the Clintons as part of his political brand. Now, critics say his sympathy for Clinton suggests a desire to avoid any process that could reopen attention on his own relationship with Epstein. Democrats argue that the sudden resistance to public testimony reveals how dangerous transparency could be to powerful figures in both parties. But they emphasize one key point. The Clintons are not refusing to testify. They're asking to do it publicly. Republicans are blocking that request. At the same time, the Oversight Committee has threatened to hold the Clintons in contempt of Congress, even though they have agreed to testify under oath. Critics say that turns accountability upside down, punishing cooperation while shielding others from scrutiny. Throughout this debate, Republicans say their investigation is about justice for Epstein's victims. But advocates for survivors respond that invoking victims while keeping testimony hidden and tightly controlled is not justice. They argue that real respect for victims means exposing the full truth in the open, regardless of who it implicates. Legal analysts warn that selective transparency erodes public trust. When people believe that powerful figures get special treatment, faith in the system collapses. The Epstein case has always been about more than one man. It has been about how wealth, influence, and political power can distort justice. Epstein was able to operate for years despite warnings, complaints, and red flags. His connections to powerful people allowed him to avoid consequences that ordinary citizens would face immediately. Now, years later, the same questions remain. Who protected him? Who looked the other way? And who is still being protected now? As millions of Epstein-related documents remain unreleased and unanswered questions continue to surround powerful figures, the core issue is no longer just Epstein. It is about whether Congress will apply the same standard of accountability to everyone, including Donald Trump. The Clintons are saying, put us on camera and ask whatever you want. Trump's allies are saying, keep it private. And Trump himself has shown no interest in testifying under oath. For many Americans, this has become a test of whether the political system is capable of real transparency, or whether investigations will continue to be shaped by loyalty, power, and fear of what the truth might reveal. In the end, the battle over the Epstein files is not only about past crimes, it is about the present struggle over who controls information, who gets questioned, and whether the public will ever see the full story in the light of day.